analytical techniques of pharmaceuticals and product development aspects as per the regulatory requirements. I welcome you all for the second day of STTP program. Today's session will be started by Dr. M. Vijay Jyoti ma'am. Jyoti ma'am is a professor at Raghavendra Institute of Pharmaceutical Education and Research. She received bachelor and master degree in pharmacy from Andhra University, Visakhapatnam, and PhD degree in pharmaceutical sciences from Berhampur University, and she has 16 years of teaching and research experience. She has published 30 papers in reputed international journals in the areas of heterocyclic synthesis and isolation of constituents from plant extract. She is an editorial member of Advanced Research Journal of Pharmaceutical Sciences, publishing by International Journal Foundation. Her research area of interest is anti-tubercular lead discovery from synthetic and natural origin. She is the recipient of UGC Minor Research Grant for the year 2017. Vijay Jyoti ma'am, including various professional bodies including Indian Pharmaceutical Association, Association of Pharmaceutical Teachers of India, and American Association of Pharmaceutical Scientists, International Society of Pharmaceutical and Outcome Research. Now I request to Jyoti ma'am to take over the session. Thank you ma'am.
Good morning to one and all. Today I am going to deliver some aspects on green solvents and techniques for future drug discovery. So this topic is very relevant to our daily routine, that is which in academics and research the selection of the solvents is very most important. Just I wanted to interact you with a small question. Will you please tell me the industry which do not use any chemical? Any answer from you? Which do not use any chemical? An industry or a sector rather than regulatory affairs? No? Okay. Then do you tell me any lab which uses solvents? That is also no answer. Lab or industry which uses solvent? Every industry. Example, you can say textile industry, rubber industry, polymer industry, chemistry laboratories and chemical industries. So we can tell that chemistry and usage of solvents or usage of chemicals is a part of our daily routine. So we have to take much care about the thing what we are using, how it is produced and how much those are safe and all. Okay. So anything that is manufacturing of small thing ranging from paper to toy and a paper to equipment. So not only the chemical industry, even the equipment development also based on chemistry itself. Even software technology also utilizes, that is chip preparation and all. I think you know very well. Recently some advertisers are coming. You can use a patch on the mobile so that it reduces the radiation. Is it not? So those are nothing but utilizes what is that some chemistry approach. So we need to know about the products, how those are developed and on which aspects we can tell that it is a safe product. Okay. So this science is nothing but green chemistry. Okay. So let us say that what is green chemistry? Green chemistry is a technique which describes the principles and a method starting from the synthesis to manufacture, use and disposal of everything. Okay. So mainly it focuses on pollution prevention, that is if you are starting anything, You just see that here if you are using any synthesis or production or whatever it may be, if you are just dealing with a small chemical also, you just see that how much it is reliable to the environment protection and what about its pollution aspect. Okay, so green chemistry is the science that deals about the environmental protection with the usage of chemicals and manufacturing, use and safe disposal process also. Okay, so pollution prevention is the main view of the green chemistry and environmentally benign. So if you produce a small paper also, you should think of whether it will be compatible with the environment or not. Nowadays we are using plastic covers, disposable covers and all. So before that, that is just 5 years before, there is an irrational use of the plastics and all. And after that one revolution has come, no, it is polluting the environment and it is not at all destroying, it is environmentally not benign, it is not mixing with the environment. So that so many, pollution to the marine animals and everything, it is being lead to some hazards. So if you do anything, it should be environmentally benign. Even if you dispose anything also, it should mix up with the environment and it should protect the biodiversity. Okay. Then third one is reduction of generation of hazard substance. So this is very most important. Of course you may get a product, but if it is giving a byproduct and which is hazardous to the environment or to the personal, it will not be called as the green chemistry approach. Okay. So here in the view of this, that is environmental protection, this Environmental Protection Act has led into the force in the year 1986. So up to 1986, that is every decade the environmental factors are considered and calculated, but drastic changes are observed from the year 1975. So climatic changes and everything we have observed. So scientists realized that there should be some force and act on the environment protection, because every year by year that environment is going to be polluted. So the green chemistry challenge has evolved from the year 1986. So that Environmental Protection Act has led, and it describes that here what type of chemicals we should use and up to what extent we can use the chemicals like that. Then in the year 1997, the Green Chemistry Institute is developed. This is nothing but with the representative of each country, worldwide representatives has assembled, and they have framed some rules describing that what is the green chemical approach and on what basis and how to control the usage of solvents and all. Okay. So this in the year 1997, mainly they focused on the research aspects. So up to what extent research can be explored and on what basis research can be allowed, and education, not only that here chemistry, social sciences and all, education about the environment is very most important, so that you know environmental science. I think in B Pharmacy also, even in PG courses also, environmental science is the very most important topic. So education about the environment protection, conferences, environment summit, world protection summits, those are worldwide summits, and environmental science is the very leading subject in US and UK countries. And public awareness, this is very most important. You know what is that? June 5th is called as the Environment Day, International Environment Day. So here this environment protection, so like that they have framed, yes, worldwide some revolution should come to protect our environment. Okay. So then after that, in 2000 year, American Chemical Society has given some guidelines and framed some rules to implement the environment protection in every academic institute and also in the industry. Okay, so all the industries should submit the report on what basis and how they are taking the precautions to protect the environment. Okay, so now let us see that here what are the aims and how those are evolved, and I said that some frame lines. Okay, so this is about that here. The green chemistry mainly focuses on reduction. I think in environmental science you have known 3R technology. What is that? Reduce, reuse, recycle. So in the same way that here in green chemistry also, reduction is the main aim of the environment protection. So what to reduce is nothing but the first one, that is cost. So if you plan anything to produce even a polymer from the pharmaceutics department or a new chemical reagent or anything, we have to see the production cost should be very, very less. So the production cost, say for example, person A, you might have discovered a new chemical reagent for the analysis with the cost of 10,000, and another some person B has synthesized the same reagent with the cost of 500. It definitely it will come under the Environmental Protection Act. So production cost should be very, very less. We can reduce the production cost. Then next one is wastage. So if you plan for anything, the waste should be very, very minimum. Say for example, A plus B gives rise to product C. Along with C, D, E, F, G are the byproducts. We cannot tell that it is a green reaction because along with the C product, we are getting so many intermediates. Again, separation and all require the use of so many solvents. Is it not? So we cannot consider that reaction even though it is very useful. There will be so many wastage of chemical and all. Okay. Then material. If you use less materials, say for example, A plus B plus C plus D gives rise to E. If other person have synthesized A plus B is equals to E. So the number of the starting products they have used will be very less. So this can be done by use of the catalysts and all. Then next one is energy. So energy utilization is very most important. Either if you use the thermal energy or radiation energy, if you succeed any production or manufacturing with the less energy, it will be the very good one. Say for example, refluxing for 8 to 10 hours, refluxing for 24 hours. Then next one, other person will utilize sonochemistry or what is that, microwave irradiation. Within 20 minutes he will complete the reaction. So they saved that here, that is what is that, energy. So if you produce any product with the minimum use of any kind of energy, so it comes under what is that, green chemistry approach. Then very most important one, risk and hazard. So if the production is not having any risk reaction or hazard substance generation, it will be the very good. So we have to reduce the risk and hazard. Say for example, synthesis of sodium. So sodium metal, you know, it is highly flammable, and reaction with thionyl chloride something. So if you use any catalyst or a protecting mechanism that will reduce the flammability, it will come under what is that, green chemistry approach. Okay. So next one is sustainability. Yes, you will succeed with the what is that, manufacturing and all, but we have to concentrate on sustainability. So what to sustain? Sustaining means keeping the something in the same position for long time. Do not spoil the environment. At least let us help in the protection of environment in the sustained position. Okay. So how to sustain? First you just concentrate on the employees protection. So of course tomorrow people will become the what is that, industrialists. So you just concentrate on the protection of the employees and limit the time of the exposure of the people to that reactions and all. So frame that here all the guidelines, however you can reduce the what is that exposure of the employees and the most protective means. So this is very most important guideline, and they will see the documents and they will check what measures you are taking to protect the employees and all. And competitive benefits, this is already I said that. So if any firm is coming with, say for example, any vaccine, if those are producing with 10,000 rupees and another company is producing with 5,000, definitely it will be a, what is that, competition among these two companies. So with the minimum amount and more beneficial, that is nothing but competency in the business. Then next one is social cohesion. This is very, very most important. Nowadays we are seeing so many issues from the society. Even I think in 3 years before, that is, we have seen that some allegations from Tadipatri, that is cement industry is producing so many pollution. So people are fighting to, what is that, against the protection of environment. So this is the very good example of the social cohesion. Okay. Then capital growth profitability, we have to see the capital growth also. Then next one is biodiversity. It is very, very most important. So not only that our, that is personal protection, we have to protect that all kind marine animals, birds and everything. Then climatic change. So this is very most important. So the industries which evolve the gas and water and sewage water, if it spoils the climate, you know that global warming is the what is that current problem, running problem. And I think even in yesterday's paper also we have seen, what is that, in Uttarakhand we have seen that falling of the snow hills and floods, those lead to the floods. So this is nothing but because of erratic and drastic climate change occurred due to the pollution. So we have to sustain the environment, and for this environment health and safety policy has aroused. So this EHS policy in the Environment Protection Action, that is Act 1986 itself, it is included, and mainly it describes about the codes of conduct. Codes of conduct means what is that? Yes, are you running any industry with all these guidelines or not? So according to the codes of conduct, we have to establish an academic institute or research institute or an industry, whatever it may be. So EHS policy also focuses on mission. That means it gives the frame lines we have to follow. Mission means, you know very well, what is that? If we divide off that one, we have to be penalized. But definitely we will be penalized. So then vision and values. So that is environmental ethical values are very most important in the view of protection of what is that, biodiversity and all. So this is about the concept of sustainability. Okay. Then these are the principles, I think you know very well. There are 12 principles in green chemistry. So prevention, I already said, atom economy, that is less production cost should be very less hazard chemical substances and all. So all these what I said comes under this, what is that, 12 green chemistry principles. Okay. So in this reduce derivatives, this is very most important. So plan to produce the target molecule and not the intermediates and byproducts. So that we can reduce the total cost of that one, that is atom economy can be achieved. Okay. Then next one is solvent uses. I already said that, what is that, every industry will use. So if we ask any industry, that is even that what we said, rubber industry, textile industry, they say yes, every industry will use the chemicals. Okay. Then according to the Environmental Protection Act, there are some solvent, they have described the effect of some solvents in the chapter, what is that, hazards, and they have given the point wise also. Okay. Just we will see the examples. First one is, what is that, toluene. Okay. So toluene, and it shows the effect on, what is that, airways and the respiratory system according to the what is that? Which is mentioned in hazardous chapter in Environment Protection Act. It comes under 304. So according to the 304 guidelines, toluene produces the effect on the, what is that, respiratory tract. Like that here, this is also found to possess some teratogenicity and also have the effect on the unborn child. So these are the numbers which explains about the toxicity of the solvents. Then coming to the dichloromethane, we know that it produces cancer, and this is specified in the rule, what is the 351. So that means these are the numbers, and dimethyl formamide and N-methylpyridine, dimethyl acetate. So these are all the solvents which should not be used in the pharmaceutical industry and also in any industry. Even acrylates, you know. If we see the toys, we will see that choking hazard is there. Keep the children away from, what is it, keeping in mouth like that. So that is nothing but these guidelines are given from, what is that here, EHS hazard chapter, which is specified according to the rule. Okay. So then let us see that here this is the studies given by some of the pharmaceutical industries. Those are we can see that Pfizer company, GSK, and also Sanofi. These are the three industries. They have studied some solvent effects, and they have, according to their studies, they have categorized and they follow their categorization for the usage of the solvents. So first one is here, this is the first one. This is from what is that, Sanofi? No, last one is Sanofi. I think this is GSK. See that? So this is GSK, I think. So alcohols classification. Under this alcohols classification, that is methanol, all these green, these are preferred according to their research studies. So this green table indicates that it can be used for the knee. Okay. So according to the, what is that, GSK studies, this green table represents that those are the green solvents they are using as the solvents. And here's yellow one, you can see it is not highly preferred, but for the specific use they can. And undesirable, this is pentane and N-hexane, and also benzene, direct usage of the benzene as the solvents in lot amounts, and dimethyl formamide, I said, dimethyl acetate, N-methylpyridine. So according to their studies, they have categorized as those are not the green solvents. So they have observed some toxicity. Then this one, next one is GSK or yes, this is Pfizer, I think this is GSK. So here they have observed that major issues with all of these solvents. Okay, so what are those? Acetonitrile, dimethyl formamide, dimethyl acetate, N-methylpyridine, and even the benzene, and even pentane and hexane. So here I would like to acknowledge some point here. So if cognosy people or ecology people, if they want to approach with the extraction, so we have to see the solvent effect as it is considered. You can see last three are not at all the green solvents. So most toxic effects are observed with this one, especially with dimethyl formamide, dimethyl acetate, even the acetonitrile. So extractions with these solvents should be avoided. Okay. Then benzene and N-hexane. As you know, complete hydrophobic solvent should not be used, because what is that? Hydrocarbons are, what is that? Carcinogenic. Okay. So this table gives an idea what is that, what are the green solvents which can be used like that. So first one, this is, what is that, methanol, ethanol, propanol up to butanol. According to the Sanofi, we can see that these are considered as the green solvents. So if you use any solvent in the lot amount, we have to see that whether we are selecting that green solvent or not. Okay. Then next one. So what are the green solvent? If we tell that those are not the green solvent and toxic, produces the toxic effect, so then let us see what are the green solvents. So these are the green solvents, that is water, dimethyl sulfoxide, and dimethyl formamide can be used in little amount, not as the solvent. And so here especially to categorize as that one I have included acetonitrile. This is usable but not completely as the solvent, and nitromethane, acetone and ethanol. Okay, so these are the green solvents given by the Environment Protection Action, and not for the solvents, and some are specific to the solvents, some are specific for what is the rinsing purpose, like that. Okay, now let us see. Some of the solvents are there. As I said that some controversy with acetonitrile and dimethyl formamide are there. Why I am telling that means here, if you see the solubility, some of the chemicals are not at all soluble in any of the solvent. We go for two trials, that is DMSO and dimethyl formamide. Yes, definitely those will be solubilized in DMF and DMSO, but some toxic effects are there. So in such cases we can go for the alternatives. What are those alternatives means here? This is very most important in our pharmaceutical industry. We can use the supercritical fluids and lactate esters, water, perfluorinated hydrocarbons and the ionic solvents. Rather than all this, if you do not use any solvent, it is the very better one. That means if you don't use any solvent, that is nothing but solid phase synthesis. Okay, so this is about what is that alternatives for the solvents, and let us see that one by one and how those are utilized in the pharmaceutical industry, like that. So first one I said that water. So this is renewable or non-renewable? We cannot produce non-renewable, but here you know it is the green solvent because it does not produce any harm and environmentally benign, and mainly it acts as the what is that we can say that synthetic efficiency can be done, but there is a limitation, that is extractions, plant extractions cannot be done with the water alone because fungus formation will be there. So if you extract also, again we have to what is that at least percolate with some other organic solvent, because water is the what we can say a good solvent for the growth of the microorganisms. So some limitations are there, but if we just keep aside some extraction, other chemical industries and other aspects, water is the very good solvent. Then another application with this water is it acts as the dual activator medium. That means you know what is water, H plus and OH minus. Since it contains both of the ions, that is positive ion, negative ion, so nucleophilic substances will also be dissolved, electrophilic substances will also be dissolved. Negative charge containing chemicals will be dissolved in H plus ion part, and positive part will be dissolved in negative part. So that water is called as the dual activator medium. Okay, so that we are telling that water is the very good solvent. Then supercritical fluids. So example we can take that water and also carbon dioxide. So at the optimum temperature, carbon dioxide and water also both will exist in what is that at triple point. It is neither, it is not we can tell that neither gas or liquid or solid. So it is the what we can tell at the triple point, it is the combination of all these three states. Okay, so the supercritical temperature of the carbon dioxide is nothing but supercritical temperature is 31.3 degrees. So at this temperature carbon dioxide exists in the triple point where it is nothing but at the supercritical stage, and especially dry ice is the one of the good product which can be used as a solvent, and water at 374 degrees centigrade it exists as the supercritical fluid. Okay, so the next one is this is the phase diagram, and you can see this is the triple point. So below this point, that is minus 56.3, which is equal to the 31.3 degrees centigrade, carbon dioxide exists as this stage. So which is neither what is that gas, liquid or solid. Okay, so then in which conditions and for which reactions we can use supercritical fluid is the point. So for the chemistry people it is very useful, that is hydrogenation. Even for the pharmaceutics people, if they need to synthesize any polymer, they can choose and say that here, that is hydrogenation, reduction reactions, epoxidation reactions and ring closure reactions, radical reactions, free radical reactions, ring closure, biotransformations, polymerization. So in polymer industry, supercritical fluid is having the, what is that, we can tell that emerging field of that uses of carbon dioxide. Okay. Then next one is ionic liquid. So this is the very new range of the solvent, that is ionic liquid. So this ionic liquid composed of one heterocyclic ring, that is imidazole with positive charge, where nitrogen possess valency 4 with positive charge, and this is the alkyl side chain, and this is, what is that, phosphorus hexafluoride. So you can see that it contains the positive charge and also negative species. So that here, as I said, that water has the dual activator medium, here also that ionic liquids, because of the two ions in its nature, it can be used for solubilization of any chemical, and it affords the solubility because of the presence of positive and negative ions. Okay. Then we can see one of the example, that is solubility of starch. So this is 10% starch in ionic liquid, you can see complete dissolution, and whereas starch in water we can see somewhat less solubility. Okay. So ionic liquids even we can use in any field, even in the analytical chemistry field also. So this is the model of the ionic liquid. So here you can see that, what is that, green portion, green units represents the anions, that is negative portion, and grey portion represents the cations. So grey portion, this one, cations means what is that, imidazole, and anion portion is nothing but phosphorus hexafluoride part. This red part is nothing but the chemical whatever we use. So this comes under what is that, solid adsorption theory, and here, so here it will be absorbed completely to enhance the solubility. Okay. Then next one is composition. What is the composition means, already I said that. So ionic liquids especially contains, what is that, heterocyclic ring, especially imidazole is mostly using. Now the researchers also developed with pyridinium also. So this is the alkyl side chain portion, and even the boron tetrafluoride is also used. So the major part is nothing but heterocyclic ring with positive charge and inorganic ion. Okay. So this ionic liquid increase the solubility of not only the organic compounds, even the inorganic compounds can also be dissolved. Okay. So these ionic liquids are used in the synthesis of several organic compounds also with the use of organisms. Okay, I will tell this example in next series. So these are the applications of ionic liquids because of thermal stability, because say for example ammonia, you know that we cannot use ammonia as a solvent for boiling for long hours because of its high vaporization. So thermal stability, low vapor pressure and high electrostaticity and also high heat capacity, non-flammability, all these are the characters of these ionic liquids, and these are the various areas which utilizes ionic liquids. Okay. Then so these are the various areas which utilizes ionic liquids. So this one and all chemistry part, how to synthesize. This is the, sorry. So this is the heterocyclic ring, alkyl side chain and condensation gives required ionic liquid. Okay. Then next one is ethyl lactate. It is a renewable solvent, ethyl lactate. Nowadays ethyl lactate is placing an important role in selection of the solvent, and it is recyclable and biodegradable. So even to dissolve any organic compound, not only the methanol and ethanol, we can try with the ethyl lactate, which is a renewable solvent. Okay. Then next one is So up to here, I have discussed that solvent part in the green chemistry. Okay. So now I think you got some idea which type of the solvents are to be used and selected for any type of manufacturing of the polymers or synthesis of reaction. Now let me go to the second step, that is what are the techniques to apply in the chemistry. Those are called as the green techniques. I said that heating for long hours and all. So those are traditional methods for organic synthesis or for drug synthesis and all. Now let us go to the next part, that is green chemical methods. So in that first one is nothing but microreactor technology. So microreactor technology means instead of taking the large amounts of quantity, so just we can take the minute quantity starting from the micrograms. So take just below the 10 micrograms of all starting products and complete the what is that pilot synthesis or trial and error basis of synthesis. So for this we can see that here burette means this long, 1 meter long, and pipette means what is that, 1 feet long. Not like that. In the microreactor technology we can acquire what is that small mini equipment and we can take the mini quantities, and this is called what is that microreactor technology. So for that separate equipment and glassware is also available. So just on the trial basis we can do if the starting material cost is very high, and not only that, to reduce the production cost it is very better to start with the lowest quantities. Okay. So then next one is microwave irradiation. So microwave irradiation, it is an emerging field of organic synthesis. So instead of refluxing for long hours, we can use that generally 100 to 300 milliwatts of radiation is enough to dissolve any type of metals or even that what we can tell organic compounds. So we can just we have to optimize the condition at what wavelength we have to proceed for the reaction and at up to what extent, that is 3 minutes like that. So no chemical reaction can be carried out for 10 minutes. Within 1 to 3 minutes we can achieve the chemical reaction by the use of microwave radiation. So microwave oven technology is the emerging field of organic synthesis. Okay. Then next one is ultrasound technology. It is also known as sonochemistry. Okay. So by using the sound waves we can achieve the chemical reactions, organic synthesis. Generally for what is that here, sono waves we have to optimize the conditions for this also. It is a separate division of the chemistry. So we can use especially for mixing of the solvents to ensure the efficient mixing. We can use this ultrasound technology. Even in HPLC also you will use that mixing of the solvents with sonification. So in such a way organic synthesis can also be done by using this sonochemistry. Okay. Next one I am focusing on the enzymes and microorganisms. So those are called as the biocatalysts. So catalyst is nothing but a compound which enhances the rate of reaction. So this catalyst may not only the chemical compounds, even the enzymes and microorganisms can also be used to increase the production and also to minimize the time. Okay. So this is described in the enzyme chemistry. So this is father of the enzyme research, that is Dr. Edward Howell. He is the father of enzyme research and he has innovated several vitamins with the use of these enzymes. Then next one is Edward Buchner. He is the father of enzyme chemistry. He started that here, that means he explained what are the optimum conditions that should be done, and you know Michael-Menton constant, K value, log phase value, all those are described by the Edward Buchner. Okay. So let us see that here how the enzymes are involved in organic synthesis. So this is the substrate. Substrate means starting product. So starting products will be having so many substitutions and all. Then this is the enzyme structure. You can see brown part is nothing but enzyme structure. So if we, according to the enzyme structure, if we select any chemical moiety that is structurally similar chemical moiety with some substitution, we can see the form binding with the substrate and enzyme. Okay, so now this enzyme substrate complex lead to give some product. This we have studied in the biochemistry. So this one, so that you know that many of the xanthine oxidase enzyme inhibitors, all these are nothing but produced by the use of the enzyme chemistry itself. Okay, now let us see that what are the benefits of using this enzyme chemistry or enzymes as biocatalyst? Because of the chemoselectivity. So chemoselectivity means here what are the functional groups are there in the substrate, we can compare with the enzyme chemistry and all. So it affords the, what is that, selectivity according to the enzyme. Okay, then regioselectivity. So regioselectivity means, regio means some place. So we can assess that here to which part of the enzyme can be blocked or can be activated like that. Okay, so according to the enzyme structure and the purpose we need, we can achieve the synthesis. Okay, then next one is diastereoselectivity. So diastereomers, you know, that is we know that lactic acid has the diastereomers. Like that, even the definite that means conformations can be achieved, and even isomers like small d, small l, that is optically active compounds can be synthesized. Capital D, capital L isomers can also be synthesized by using these enzymes as the biocatalyst. Then let us see the example, that is, say for example, this is the R enantiomer. You have synthesized R enantiomer of the drug molecule. See that this is the structure of the enzyme. So this part is, what is that, some chemical structure part is similar with that of the drug. That means we have synthesized a drug according to the enzyme structure. Yes, this is rectangle, it fits with the rectangle shape of the enzyme. Next one is triangle, and think that it is bromo, this is alkyl, this is nitro. So same type of the groups are also present on the enzyme. So that we can say that similarity is there between the enzyme and the R enantiomer that you are suspecting to synthesize. Now see that here it will form hydrogen bonds, or we can some bonds, and so that it will bound to the enzyme. Coming to that enantiomer, S enantiomer of the same drug molecule. So here this opposite configuration is there. Here enzyme chemistry is not matching. So this rectangle shape will not combine with the, what is that, sphere shape of the drug molecule. It indicates that there is no binding site for that particular enzyme. So among these R&As, you can tell that R enantiomer is structurally similar to the enzyme, so that you can assess that the R enantiomer will possess the highest biological activity. Okay, so like that we can select that according to the, what is that, chemistry of enzymes, we can synthesize the drug molecule. So that you will say that here it is most important and beneficial to produce, what is that, stereoselective, diastereoselective isomers. So but one of the thing we can tell, if you use enzymes as the biocatalyst, you have to use some coenzyme, that is cofactors also. Cofactors, you know, that is what are those, some FMN, FAD and all vitamin factors derivatives, and temperature is also very most important. If we use high temperature, enzyme activity will be lost. Okay, so these are the optimized conditions, that is temperature. We should not use any metal if you proceed with the enzyme chemistry, because metals will precipitate the protein part of the enzyme. Okay, then next one is, by the use of the enzymes we can achieve all these type of reactions, that is synthesis of what is that, activated C double bond C bonds, production of the new amino acids, production of the new proteins, amino mutases enzymes, and all these are nothing but examples of enzymes, liases, hydrolases, dehydrohalogenases. That means you can achieve removal of some protecting groups, or you can introduce some protecting groups. Okay, then here I am telling some of the examples of the drugs and reactions here. See, this is the example by the use of isomerase enzyme. Here you can tell, see that here, this is the that is furanone ring, and furanone ring is transformed into its isomer by the use of isomerase. Okay, like that, even the isomers can be synthesized by the selection of particular isomerase enzymes. Okay, next one, ene reductase. Ene means double bond. So to reduce the double bond, here you can use that ene reductase enzyme at particular pH and temperature is 30 degrees centigrade, heating for 24 hours. So you can reduce, what is that? Now here just 30 degrees centigrade is in some countries it will be the, what is that? Room temperature. It's very minimum temperature, just not heating, just keep it and incubate at 30 degrees centigrade for 24 hours, so the double bond can be reduced to give the single bond. Okay, so like that reduction reactions can be done. Then these are the transaminase enzyme uses. Here you can see double bond O that can be substituted by amine. So amine production can be done, and these are also, that is deracemization. That means, what is that? Deracemization means non-specific reactions can be converted into specific isomers. If you need only D isomer from the racemic mixture, you can synthesize by using, what is that? Omega transaminase enzymes. So these are the examples of the enzymes available to produce various reactions. Okay, so these are also some other examples. And stereo selective, that is I said R and S selective. So here you can tell this is non-stereo specific, and here we have seen that R configuration by the use of amino mutase enzyme. Okay, so there are several enzymes available in the market. We can use, select according to the type of product we need. Okay, so this is also example of the reaction, and I will give you some examples of the drugs which utilizes the enzymes as biocatalyst. Those are naproxen, ibuprofen, ketorolac, ketoprofen and flumiprophen. All these are drugs were synthesized, and still we are synthesizing with the use of, what is that? Enzymes as the biocatalysts. Okay, so that I said that enzymes, that means green chemistry, plays an important role in drug discovery. Okay, now let us see the another example of the drug, that is captopril. So this captopril, we can see that here S and R isomer, but what is that? S isomers being 100 times more potent if we use, what is that here? Enzymes. Okay, so like that selective enantiomers can also be synthesized by using the enzymes. Then coming to the next one, microorganisms. So using of microorganism is also an emerging field of the drug discovery. Examples of the drugs we can tell, captopril is synthesized by using Pseudomonas or Aspergillus lipase, either enzyme or the microorganism. Pseudomonas microorganisms can also be used. Example, you know, most of the antibiotics like streptomycin derivatives, newer streptomycin, is it not? So all those were synthesized from microorganisms only. And here lamifluridine, this is also synthesized from the Pseudomonas lipase, that is even anti-HIV drugs and also antiviral drugs are also synthesized using microorganisms. And large scale synthesis, not only for the pilot synthesis, large scale synthesis is also one of the discovery by recent scientists. Example, glipizide, it is used Pseudomonas putida as the microorganism to increase the yield of the product. Then L-DOPA also utilized the use of microorganisms by using Erwina herbicola microorganism. Okay, so this is about the points I have delivered. That is, I have delivered two aspects today. That is, uses of green solvents as one part, and techniques for the selection of the processing method. And green techniques, I said that micro reactor technology and microwave technology, ultrasound technology, enzymes uses, and also microorganisms uses. Okay, hope it will be useful for you, and it has given some idea about the selection of the some point. And any doubts, you are most welcome. Yes, this girl, she asked me about the selection of the solvent for the extraction procedures and all. So here I need to say something, that is selection. We have to start the solvent extraction ranging from non-polar to polar. So first you select the non-polar solvent. So like N-hexane or what is that, any derivative that is substituted hexane also. Then that non-polar solvents to the polar solvents, like that. And if you select the polar solvents also, directly don't go with the high polar solvent. Start with the 5% polar solvent, then 10% polar solvent, and 15% polar solvent, like that. So combination of the non-polar to polar, that is 10:90 or 30:70 is the good ratio for the selection of the solvent. Okay, so we have to start from the non-polar to solvent extraction. And if you don't have any idea, just take only two solvent. First one with the completely non-polar, and next one is two polar solvents. That is, what is that, semi-polar and polar. So do not go directly with the ether and all, because high volatility will be there. So you just select that here, either the benzene and some other organic solvents, methanol and also ethanol you can use. And dichloromethane, because of its toxicity, we should not go for the first trial. Okay, so avoid the usage of this dichloromethane. Then coming to the phase separation, or the what is that, extraction with solvent, we have to do that here. First you take that, if you have extracted with non-polar solvent, so you take that extract, filter it, and take the total content of the filtrate, and to this add 10 ml of the polar solvent. Don't shake it and keep it in a separating funnel for long time. So you will get two layers, and down layer, you know that high density layer will come down, and you just separate it, and after that wash the, what is that, high density layer with the polar solvent and non-polar solvent. So after that you can evaporate, so that you can get that here the polar solubilizing contents will come to the polar solvent. Okay. So this is one of the technique, starting from the non-polar to polar. Okay. So any doubts regarding the green chemistry approach? You are most welcome.
If any queries, please ask the ma'am.
Thank you. I am very thankful to appreciate some of the knowledge of green chemistry. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jyoti ma'am, for excellent session on green chemistry and green chemistry challenges and what are the solvents used in green chemistry. And now I request Dr. Vinod sir to certificate distribution to Jyoti ma'am.